Today, we are talking about how to achieve an advanced level of consciousness. Now, right off the bat, I want to tell you, if anyone is telling you that achieving a higher level of consciousness is easy, they're lying to you. It's very complicated, it's hard, and it takes a very long time. However, we're going to talk about a way to start the process that almost everyone overlooks, and you can start doing it right now. And it's incredibly important, and how it will start this process of allowing you to reach the highest level of consciousness. So what I want to do right off the bat is discuss the idea that when it comes to levels of consciousness, we have to understand that people live in a sphere and a bubble. And raising your consciousness is about expanding that sphere and expanding that bubble. That's going to be what we're talking about, but what you need to do to be able to reach that advanced level of consciousness, or else at least start that process, is something you can start doing. But to get started talking about this, I want to take a look at this article called "How to Achieve a More Advanced State of Consciousness," and it's written by the Knowledge Collective on Medium.com. It's a good article. I recommend it. Now, it starts off by saying, what if there's much more to our reality than we think possible? Now, the reason why I bring this particular article up is because it discusses something that's really important, but there's a way to go beyond it and further. So let's take a look at this right now and then see how to really incorporate this into our lives. So it says, if you live in a society where the television and newspapers are the only sources of information you have, you're going to be very misinformed, and it's going to be very hard for you to break free of your current paradigm, especially if it seems very comforting and safe to you. Now, that's the important things to realize, okay? So you have a current paradigm, that in the paradigm is your current structure of thought. So we call them reality tunnels. Everyone exists in a different reality tunnel, okay? Whether you're a Christian, a Hindu, a Buddhist, an atheist, a pagan, every single person exists in a different reality tunnel. They have their own concepts that they talk about. They have their own way of seeing the world. You know, Christians see the universe as a creation of God. Atheists see the universe as being a random collection of atoms, molecules, particles, etc. New Agers see reality as being frequency or energy. So each individual has a specific reality tunnel that they are in, and that's how they interpret reality. We can understand this as a paradigm. You have one, I have one, we all have one. Now, it's very hard for people to break free of these. And here it says why you have to transcend your bubble. Okay, so you are very limited if you only live inside your own bubble, which is a limited prison of beliefs. So your model of reality exists to help you make sense of the world. That's what it does. That's its purpose. Your reality tunnel, your paradigm exists to help you make sense of the world. When you're growing up, you ask a question. You ask your mom and dad, hey, where do animals come from? And if they're an atheist, they'll teach you about evolution. If they're a creationist, they'll tell you God created them. So your paradigms exist to help you make sense of reality, how to get along in the world using these schemas, these constellations of ideas. But they are also what can limit you and become prisons. So it says, but if you're willing to listen and look, if you are open to questions and to possibly changing your beliefs, you can achieve a much more advanced consciousness. And that's what our society does not want people to do, because it's against the primal paradigm of survival of the fittest. Those who are too curious to keep questioning the current reality, who are not happy with their reality, and are open to possibly changing their beliefs, this group of people actually destroys the current faulty programming by their actions. And this is not good for the system, because the system is about hiding new advanced truths from the masses and feeding them the same lies over and over again. And it says, I think this is because thought structures don't want to dissolve or get replaced by new and more coherent ones. For example, it hurts when something you identify with goes away or you have to let go of something. The same is applicable to large networks or the collective human consciousness. So here's the thing. It says, for example, it hurts when something you identify with goes away or you have to let go of something. Do you notice that if you ever challenge someone's beliefs or ideas or concepts, they get extremely offended and will fight you or get angry, retaliate? And the reason why this is because people identify themselves with their beliefs. They identify themselves with their paradigm. They identify with themselves with that whole structure of beliefs that surrounds them. So when you are trying to criticize or debate or someone's beliefs and ideas, they take it as an attack on the self because they identify with it. So if you're attacking this, they're taking it as an attack on them, and automatically that's going to result in a response of fighting back because they are perceiving an attack. So what one needs to do is realize, we're going to talk a little bit about Hegel. And you know I love talking about Hegel, but this is extremely important because Hegel's book, The Phenomenology of Spirit, is all about tracking the evolution of consciousness from the very bare basic consciousness all the way to absolute consciousness, which is God consciousness. And so Hegel talks about this evolution. What we talk about as paradigms and reality tunnels, Hegel called the concept. Now, the concept is going through a dialectical evolution where it encounters opposing ideas and is constantly updating itself and evolving. And this is how it reaches higher and higher levels of consciousness. However, most humans don't do this. If they encounter something that conflicts with their ideas, something that conflicts with their paradigms, what do? Well, they identify with it, so they attack, they retaliate. But what one needs to actually do is consider one's paradigm and look for holes in it. This is the key, all right? This is what I really want to get across. Most people, they have their paradigm and they want to find everything that supports it, that props it up, that reinforces it. What you want to do is try and find holes in it, because if you find holes in it, then you know that you have to expand yourself. Now, Hegel said that to be aware of your limitations is to already be beyond them. And that is key. You need to become aware of what the limitations are within you, with your concept of reality, with your ideas, because once you become aware of your limitations, you are, and the reason he says that to be aware of your limitations is to be already beyond them is I want you to think of it like this. Now, these ideas are both very simple and very complex. It's usually the last thing that people want to do, but it's very important. So if you imagine someone who's just at home in their ideas, that never question, that never look towards external ideas, anything that conflicts, you imagine this person's mind. Imagine them just sort of being in a field. They're just in a field, and that field sort of represents their reality tunnel, their concept. Now imagine someone else that starts to explore that field, goes all the way across and encounters a wall and realizes that there's a wall all around them. Well, the thing is that even though both these people exist within the same field, one person is aware of the wall and the other person is not. The person who is not aware of the wall doesn't realize that there are any limitations and thus does not think that there is anything beyond. The person who sees the wall realizes that there's something more. So do you see the difference? To be aware of your limitations is to already be beyond them, because when you are aware of the wall, you know that there is something more, and thus there is something beyond. And then this is what encourages one to expand their consciousness, because they realize that there's a limitation, there's an error, there's a flaw, and one must go further. The person who doesn't and just sits in the field all day and never realizes there's a wall will sit in that same paradigm, that same reality tunnel, that same concept for their entire lives. So what one has to do that is key, and it seems really simple, but nobody does it, and that is questioning your beliefs. And I'll tell you how this starts a dialectical process if you're constantly questioning your beliefs, and really take this seriously, because most people, oh yeah, sure, I question my beliefs, but do you really? Because let me tell you, I have found very, very, very few people who actually do. Right? Most people do not question their beliefs. And I'll give you an example in my life, like how this worked. So I grew up in a strict Christian household. So I had, by default, the Christian reality tunnel, the Christian paradigm, the Christian concept. Well, guess what? Most people sit there their whole lives. They go to church, they pray to Jesus, they just stay in the Christian community, they read the Bible, blah, blah, blah. Well, what I did was I started looking at, well, wait a minute, there's a lot of things that Christianity doesn't explain. Creationism seems really problematic, doesn't seem to jive with science. And when you start looking at the supposed evidence of the Bible, like the prophecies that apparently come true, they're laughable. They're very, very silly. They're ridiculous. So rather than just sitting comfortably in my reality tunnel, I looked for the walls, and I found a lot of fucking cracks in the walls. There's a lot of problems. So what I did was I moved out of the reality tunnel, the paradigm, the concept of Christianity, and I stepped into agnosticism. Now, for ease of, so agnosticism is basically like, well, I didn't fully commit to atheism, like the idea that reality is only material and that there is no God. I didn't fully commit to that, but I was heavily leaning towards that. Okay, so for ease of conversation, let's say that's what I was. So I go from Christianity, and then I go over to atheism and materialism. There is no God. Reality is material. That's it. Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, etc. Now, most people, even people who leave Christianity and let's say go to this new paradigm of atheism and materialism, most people stop there. They do. They stop. They stop right there. They're like, okay, well, now I'm here now, and I'm going to set up camp and be here for the rest of my life. I see a lot of people who do that, who will leave Christianity, and let's say they'll go to atheism or Satanism or some occult system or something, and they just sit there. Now that's their new paradigm, and they will stay there. But that's not what you need to do. Now that you're in this new paradigm, you have to find the walls and the edges of that paradigm. And this is the Hegelian concept of dialectic, the conceptual dialectic, where it's constantly going over and above itself by finding its own contradictions within itself. And so, for example, in atheism and materialism, I started studying philosophy and realizing, wow, there are a lot of things that scientific materialism cannot answer. The problem of consciousness and just the fundamental nature of matter in general, ontology, it's completely terrible at it. So I started looking into different things, and honestly, what really made me, because I was, questioning and whatnot, but what made me really find the walls there was psychedelics. Now, don't do anything dangerous or illegal, and don't feel pressured. You don't have to do psychedelics to have a higher consciousness. You don't. I'm just talking about my personal journey to give an example of finding walls and going beyond them. So by having these mental experiences and realizing that these experiences that one has cannot be explained by the scientific materialist paradigm, cannot, because one is going much beyond and having an elevated experience where it does not seem just like, oh, brain chemistry is being disrupted, but rather the filter of the brain is being lifted, so one is able to have an experience of something more, a mental reality. And so what that made me do is leave that paradigm over to a dualism. At that time, I thought, well, both matter and mind exist. There are two things. Well, then I began to explore to make a long story short, because I could just go on and on about this and I have a lot of points I want to get to. I didn't stay there. I looked at the boundaries and realized, well, philosophically speaking, there's a lot of problems there because mind-matter dualism, you look at Cartesian dualism, that there's a lot of fallacies. It just can't work. And then you move over to the idea that reality is entirely mental, that this is a rational reality, a reality of mind, a reality of frequencies, and this is able to explain certain things, etc. So the important, what I'm just trying to get across here is you see this dialectical journey, and this dialectical journey is powered by questioning your beliefs. And it seems really simple, but nobody does it. So having this capacity to not strictly identify with your beliefs, but rather recognize them for what they are, a structure of how you interpret reality that you're constantly refining. Think of it like a computer program, like an operating system, like iPhone, iOS, or whatever. It's constantly updating. What if you were still using the same operating system that came out in 2005? It would be very sluggish. It would be slow. It wouldn't be able to interact with all the new data out there today. And most people just act like that with their concepts, with their reality tunnels, with their paradigms. It's like software that never gets an update. But what one needs to do is constantly being updating, constantly being moving. Life is motion. Don't stay still. Don't stay stagnant. Constantly evolve, constantly question. Now, social media is great for spreading information. A lot of information can spread on social media, but one has to be careful with algorithms, because what algorithms do is they feed you what you like. They feed you what keeps you watching. So very often the algorithm will just feed you information that just props up your current paradigm, because you go, oh, well, they like watching this, so I'm just going to send this information to them. If I send them conflicting information, oh, well, they get angry and they shut off the app, and so the algorithm doesn't send you that anymore. And that's not always true, because some people like to argue, so they do send conflicting information. But just in general, one has to be careful. With social media, it forms this bubble where it's just reinforcing your paradigm. So social media is a double-edged sword. It's great for spreading information. Look, we're spreading information right now, but one has to be careful that the algorithm, that people don't get stuck and sort of like calcify in their paradigms because of just a reinforcing algorithm and social bubble. So there is a lot when it comes to reaching a higher level of consciousness. To reach the highest levels of consciousness, things like hyper-awareness, you have to understand what metacognition is, concept networking, phenomenological experience. You have to develop an analog all. It's hard. And again, if anyone tells you it's easy and you can do it now, they're lying. So what I'm doing is I'm telling you that you can start the process now. You can start now. You can put one foot into the pool. Take one step on the journey. And that starts with questioning your beliefs. Now, the philosopher Descartes knew this, and it's called the method of doubt, or Cartesian doubt, where Descartes looked at all his ideas, all his concepts, and he said, you know what? I'm going to get rid of all of them, all my beliefs, all my thoughts, everything, discard them, start from square one, and build my own operating system, my own way of thinking based on reason and thought and mind. And basically that's doing like a format and starting and constructing yourself rather than being constructed by outside influences. I don't want to talk too much about Cartesian doubt because that's a whole process. I wrote about that in my first book called The Metaphorical Suicide, because it's about destroying your old self, creating a new self, and metaphorically, of course. And this is about how to use the method of Cartesian doubt to examine your beliefs and ideas and make sure that you're thinking clearly and haven't been brainwashed by society, culture, religion, upbringing, etc. So, let's just see a little more of what this article here says. So it says, so the first steps towards more advanced consciousness is questioning the current paradigm. And that's absolutely right. So in addition to questioning your own paradigm, you should question sort of all paradigms out there, like the paradigm of scientific materialism, the idea that everything is matter, the paradigm of capitalism, paradigms of mainstream religion. All different paradigms and structures that are out there must be questioned. Now, does that mean that all structures are wrong or bad? No. But one should question them and not just, and this is so important because people will swear up and down that oh yeah, I do that. Of course I do that. I question my beliefs. I'm a free thinker. But look at everyone who's born into a religion and they just stay in that religion. Or they're born in a certain country and, oh, it's their country that's the best. Yet they think that they're questioning, but they're not. So, you need to be open for new information, for new thoughts, to understand that you can be deceived, that you can be lied to, that your whole life can be colored by lies if you allow that. So every second we take in enormous amounts of data through our physical senses, and we can't process this consciously. We need to filter out all the useless data. In our childhood, there's more information that was available to us. As we grow older, our default mode network, our ego becomes stronger and our consciousness becomes weaker. Okay, so I don't necessarily agree with this. So just because one's ego becomes stronger doesn't mean your consciousness becomes weaker. That's actually the reverse of that is actually true. The ego is a structure of consciousness and is what allows one to be conscious. Now, the ego is a tool. You don't want to identify with the ego, but the ego is not a bad thing. The ego can be bypassed and can allow an intuitive flow of information, but the ego is not a bad thing. It's just the model of yourself that you have. And so is it associated with the paradigm? Yeah, yes it is. But you can update it and transform it. You can be updating and transforming your ego, yourself. And that's what life is about. So the ego isn't this evil, bad thing that's limiting you. But it can be an evil, bad thing that's limiting you. You see, it's like a knife. You can use a knife to chop your vegetables, and that's great, or it can cut you and be dangerous. Ego is a tool of your higher self that allows you to have to interact socially. That's what the ego allows one to do. Just like an avatar, a body, allows you to interact physically, an ego allows one to interact in complex social situations, because it's your consciousness, it's your self-awareness, it's the idea of you. But you don't want to identify with that because you are much more than your current life. You've had many lifetimes and you have a vast unconscious reservoir as well. So there's a lot more to you than just your ego. So you don't want to identify with it, but you don't want to destroy it, and it's not this bad thing. It's a tool that's important. Very important. Okay. So says question things, start learning how you can observe your beliefs and emotional patterns every moment that goes by in your day. Learn how to change your emotions and start trying to change your reality just by changing your beliefs about it. So you can start turning your life into the experience you always wanted. Slowly, you start understanding what reality is, and you start creating your own reality. You start creating a reality that works for you and not against you. So what this really is about, though, when it talks about creating your own reality and all that, it's about being in control of your paradigm, being in control of your reality tunnel. Because creating your own reality, a lot of people don't know what that means. It's about structuring your mind so that you are in control of that paradigm. So Christians exist in the Christian reality. Atheists exist in the materialist atheist reality. New Agers exist in the New Ager reality. What you want to do is make sure that you're a reality that you are in control of. That you say, I have these certain beliefs and ideas because I have examined them and I believe them to be true based on reasoning, etc. And based on my reasoning, my intuition, my ideas should always be guided by reason. And it's that you are in control. So that's what it means by sort of creating your own reality. And this is the thing that I really want to emphasize is that, so the ideas that we talk about here, I always emphasize this. I don't want you to believe things that I say just because I say them. I don't want you to dogmatically believe them. What I do on my channel, what I want, my goal on my channel is to give you tools so that you can use those tools to reach a higher consciousness yourself. Not to tell you what to believe. If you just believe what I say, you're not going to reach a higher consciousness. You reach a higher consciousness by using the tools to do the work yourself. So, for example, understanding that mind evolves and one should be engaged in this dialectical process means that in the ideas that we talk about here, we're applying the dialectic to it. So what I mean by that is we're constantly questioning and examining the ideas that we say here. We're not like, mainstream religion such as Christianity that goes off a book that was written thousands of years ago. And it's just been that way for thousands of years. It's static and the same. Rather, the things that we talk about is constantly evolving, constantly transforming, constantly going forward, constantly going higher. It's a system of motion. It's a system of movement. It's like an operating system that's constantly receiving updates and transformations. It's not something that stays the same. So, because I can imagine a lot of people would go, well, what about the stuff you talk about? What about the stuff you believe? Isn't there limitations on that? The whole point is that the dialectic has incorporated what we talk about. so that we're constantly questioning what we talk about. And if we find any flaws, errors, or holes or walls, then we will overcome them and update the ideas to accommodate that and expand. Okay? So it's super important to realize that this applies to everything. It applies to everything. This constant exploration of your limits and pushing boundaries. So reaching higher levels of consciousness, it's a very difficult thing. It takes years and years and years. It takes a lot of hard work. But starting this process, you can start it now. And I know a lot of you have. I know a lot of people who watch my channel do this. But if you're new and you're just hearing this stuff for the first time, you can start right now. And really think about it, though, because I know most people watching this who are new are going to be like, oh, yeah, of course. I do that. I always do that. And I'm such a free thinker. And that's 9 times out of 10 not the case. Most people are not, unfortunately. And that's something that we want to change. We want a world of free thinkers. Now, I also, though, want to point out this doesn't mean believing. Some people will go, oh, well, okay, fine. So I'm not going to believe anything that I see on the news, and I'm just going to believe all the wild, crazy conspiracy theories like we're being controlled by reptiles who drink the blood of children. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying like, oh, well, you have to. When I say question everything, I mean, it does not mean that everything out there that is mainstream is bad or wrong. All right, that's not what that means. But it means to look, check, question. And that absolutely 100% should apply to your beliefs and your thought systems. And it's one of the people, people are going to say, oh yeah, I do this all the time. No, most people don't do this because they identify with their beliefs, and any sort of alteration of their beliefs, they view as an attack on themselves. So people get really defensive, really angry if you have any sort of alterations to their belief systems. So I want to really emphasize, and the main thing that I want to get across here, you're going to go to New Age channels, you're going to go to Eastern religious channels, they're going to talk about higher consciousness and how to achieve it, and they're going to be telling you, oh, well, you need to meditate or have affirmations or whatever. The way you actually achieve a higher consciousness is by exploring your limitations and going beyond them and constantly doing so. Not just going, most people stay in their own paradigm forever, whatever they were born into. Now, others who have a certain strength of mind may go from that paradigm to another, but then they just stay there. And I see this a lot with people who go from Christianity to atheism or Satanism or whatever. And if you're an atheist or a Satanist or whatever, I'm not trying to, shit on you or anything. Definitely not. I'm just saying question. I'm saying don't get stuck in just don't go from one paradigm into another. There should be this continuous evolution, this continuous spiraling trajectory towards higher and higher levels. Now, of course, there's so much more to it. Like I said, metacognition, concept networking, phenomenological experience, developing an analog all these things are incorporated into reaching something like hyper-awareness. But the first step, and the most important step, is having the ability to question your beliefs and be in control of your own mind. Because believing what people say just dogmatically isn't going to do it. It's about actually applying it to yourself to reach these higher levels. All right, my friends, I hope you enjoyed that. Please like and subscribe. I have a lot of videos on this stuff. There's so much more. And hey, if you enjoy my work, if you enjoy what I talk about, consider supporting on Patreon. It helps out a lot. That's how I'm able to spread this information, do my work, have a roof over my head, things like that. I appreciate it very much. You get access to our weekly secret live streams. We're having one right after this, our hidden Discord server, the Citadel. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who does support, especially Philanthropist, Zach, Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Michael, Angela, Maria, Top of the World, Ethan, DB, and Joel, and everyone else. The link will pop up right over here. You can also help out by hitting the join button on YouTube right below this video. Thank you very much.